Do you know that every 2 minutes in the USA, a woman dies from violence? Now you are looking at a photo of a real psychopath who heartlessly took the lives of 2 wonderful women. Christine Melton was killed in her sleep. He simply strangled her with his bare hands and tried to dispose of her body like trash. Diana Ruiz, a mother of 2, was brutally crushed by a car, turning her into a bloody pulp. And he did it with pleasure, boasting about the details of his atrocities. Christine Melton was a beauty with blonde hair, a bright smile, and a kind heart. At 35, she radiated the joy of life and shared it generously with everyone around her. Born in Illinois, Christine had shown a bright creative nature from an early age. She was passionate about painting, dancing, singing, and dreamed of becoming a famous actress someday. However, it was not a star-studded career, but the simple earthly joys that became the meaning of her life. In school, she befriended Stephanie, with whom she carried her friendship through the years. The girls shared common dreams and aspirations to find their happiness. In search of a better fate, they moved together to sunny Cape Coral in Florida, where they got jobs as waitresses at Duffy's Bar. Christine adored her job, as it allowed her to communicate with people daily and share the warmth of her heart. Relatives remember Christine as a true ray of sunshine that warmed everyone around her. She was a loving daughter, sister, friend, and was called the favorite aunt for her nephews, whom Christine paid a lot of attention to. This girl genuinely cared for her close ones and was always ready to help. No wonder she was considered the glue that held her large family together. Christine had numerous talents and hobbies. She painted beautifully, creating picturesque landscapes that adorned her friends' homes. Christine also loved to travel, especially to the mountains and beaches. This passion for travel attracted her to new places and adventures. Even in ordinary days, Christine found a reason for laughter and fun, as she had a crazy sense of humor. Her jokes were always apt and witty, which made her beloved in companies. But Christine's greatest treasure was her loyalty and ability to love sincerely. In all her relationships, friendly or romantic, she gave herself completely. She was a reliable friend who cherished friendships for years. Christine also dreamed of meeting her true love, getting married, and building a strong family. Her heart was full of tenderness and compassion for everyone around. Christine became passionate about aesthetics and dreamed of opening her own beauty salon. She attended courses in makeup and manicure, perfecting her skills. In her free time, Christine loved to experiment with her appearance, trying bold looks. Despite her love for fun, deep down, Christine remained a quiet and modest girl. She did not seek to be the center of attention and felt comfortable in a friendly circle. Christine valued trustful conversations and was genuinely interested in people's lives. This combination of external attractiveness, inner beauty, and bright energy attracted people to her. 43-year-old Diana Ruiz was the embodiment of maternal love, care, and devotion to her family. This slender woman with long dark hair and a gentle smile dedicated her life to her 2 most precious people, her teenage daughter and 5-year-old son. They were the meaning of her existence, for whom Diana spared no effort, time, or emotional warmth. Diana was born and raised in Cape Coral in a friendly Cuban family. From an early age, she was surrounded by her parents' love, who instilled in her the values of cohesion, mutual assistance, and the joy of communication. The girl grew up active and sociable, easily made friends, and was the soul of companies. At the same time, Diana showed considerable responsibility and determination, dreaming of a worthy education and profession. Fate granted Diana true feminine happiness, 2 wonderful children, and a loving husband. Her daughter inherited her mother's beauty and gentle nature, while her son her zest for life and spontaneity. Diana was proud of her little ones above all and made every effort to raise them as worthy people. She supported them in all their endeavors, rejoiced at every success, and consoled them in troubles. For her daughter, Diana was the best friend and advisor, and for her son, the most caring and wisest mom in the world. To ensure a decent future for her children, Diana worked hard. For the last 5 years, she was a constant bartender at the local Moose Lodge Club, which became her second home. She adored her job because it allowed her to communicate with many people daily, give them a good mood, and get charged with positivity from them. Colleagues and visitors fondly remembered her friendliness, wit, and ability to find common ground with everyone. Soon another bright page appeared in Diana's life, a meeting with her beloved husband Scott. Genuine feelings, filled with tenderness, care, and laughter, flared up between them. Scott was captivated by Diana's beauty, wisdom, and soulfulness, while she saw in him a reliable life partner. The lovers planned to get married and build a cozy family nest where love and harmony would reign. Diana dreamed of growing old with Scott in this charming city, holding hands and rejoicing in the successes of their children and grandchildren. But despite her happy personal life, the core of Diana's existence remained her children. Her daughter was just finishing school and preparing for college, and Diana tirelessly worked to give her the opportunity to obtain the desired education. She wanted her smart girl to reach heights and realize her potential fully. Diana also strived to spend more time with her son, while he was still very small, travel together, discover the world, and build trusting relationships. For these two little hearts, Mom was the center of the universe. In her free time, Diana was passionate about handicrafts, knitting, embroidering, weaving with beads. Her products were full of love and warmth, which the woman generously shared with her relatives. Diana also cooked wonderfully. Her signature Cuban dishes were the highlight of all festive feasts. With special joy, she gathered a large family together to enjoy heartfelt communication and shower everyone with care and tenderness. Diana's radiant smile never left her face, as she was sincerely grateful for every lived day. Even in sorrow and hardship, this courageous woman did not despair but radiated hope and faith in the better. Her bright look and encouraging words were healing medicine for everyone who needed consolation and support. Wade Wilson was born around 1994 in a troubled family of teenagers. His biological parents were too young and immature to raise a child, so they gave Wade up for adoption to a couple from their church, Candy and Steve Wilson, who had two other daughters. The adopted son grew up problematic, and from a young age, he began breaking the law. Since 2010, Wade had been arrested over 20 times for theft, fraud, hooliganism, assaults. He repeatedly served terms in prison, including more than 3 months shortly before the October murders. In relationships with women, Wade also showed cruelty. He beat, raped, and threatened to kill. His ex-girlfriends described him as a monster capable of pretending to be a nice guy only to then torment them. 6 months before the tragedy, Wade reunited with 23-year-old Melissa Montanez, who endured his beatings and betrayals. Even when he was in prison, Melissa waited for him and gave him new chances. The girl hoped that his assurances of love, excuses for aggression with drugs, and mental disorders were sincere. But soon she realized that behind the attractive mask lay an emptiness, and that her life was in danger. Wade's father, Stephen, tried to maintain a relationship with him after the adoption, despite the problems with the law. He gave his son money, neglecting his own needs. It was to him that Wade turned, fleeing from the police and asking for money for a ticket. It was to him that he described his horrific crimes with strange delight. But even the father's years of devotion could not keep him from the horror of the monster his son had become. Stephen performed his civic duty by turning Wade into the police to protect others from harm. The decisive event for the bloody incidents was October 6, 2019. That Sunday evening, Wade Wilson had fun with his girlfriend Melissa at the Buddha Bar. A quarrel erupted between them over Wade's intention to visit someone's home. Melissa categorically refused to do this. Enraged, Wade went to Melissa's car supposedly for his things, but instead he got behind the wheel and fled, leaving his girlfriend. Melissa spent the night at a friend's house, and in the morning, she discovered 8 missed calls from an unknown number, which belonged to Christine Melton. As it turned out, it was with Christine that Wade had met at the same Buddha Bar. The young couple quickly bonded over mutual sympathy and left the establishment together with Christine's friends. They continued the fun at the home of their new acquaintance, Jason, where passion flared between Wade and Christine. When the company dispersed in the early morning, Christine's friend Stephanie was calm to leave her with Wade, as she felt no alarming signs, and Christine herself assured that everything was fine. Wade, however, took advantage of the helpless sleeping girl to strangle her, wrap her in a sheet, and try to discreetly carry her out. But the stiff corpse proved too heavy, so the murderer simply left it in the house, stole the victim's phone and car, and disappeared. He immediately used the phone to quarrel with Melissa. The next victim of Wade was 43-year-old Diana Ruiz. She was simply walking to her morning shift at Moose Lodge when Wilson picked her up, pretending to be lost. As soon as Diana got into the car, he immediately attacked her, strangling her on the move. Then, in a deserted place, he dragged the still-living woman from the car and ran her over several times until her body was turned into a bloody pulp. Leaving the mutilated remains in the bushes, the killer calmly drove off to meet Melissa to beat her again. His confidence and impunity were striking in the midst of the attack on his girlfriend. He boasted to another acquaintance that he killed people at night. As soon as Melissa escaped, he got into Christine's stolen car and fled, leading the police on a chase. Obviously, the criminal acted impulsively under the influence of anger and excitement, not thinking about the consequences. He did not hide traces, did not dispose of the murder tools, and boasted about what he had done. Perhaps drug intoxication dulled his fear of punishment. Or maybe the thirst for violence simply clouded his mind and prompted him to kill again and again. No wonder one of his ex-girlfriends warned that Wade would eventually kill someone if he wasn't stopped. Unfortunately, they only stopped the monster after he had taken 2 priceless lives. Wilson returned to Cape Coral and headed straight to his girlfriend Melissa. At that time, she was at Mila Spa Salon, where Wade rushed at 8:45 am. Melissa didn't recognize the car he was driving. It was the grey Hellcat stolen from the murdered Christine. Enraged, Wade immediately started a scandal, demanding that Melissa get into the car. She refused, so Wade began forcibly dragging her into the salon. Crazed, Wilson was so eager to attack his girlfriend that he forgot to put the car in park. It rolled forward and hit another vehicle. Then he jumped out and with insane fury attacked Melissa. Despite her desperate resistance, the burly Wade quickly overpowered the delicate girl. He punched her in the face until blood flowed, bit her ear, grabbed her throat, and pinned her against the wall, threatening to kill her. And all this took place in broad daylight in front of people. Fortunately, passers-by intervened. Someone called the police. This allowed Melissa to escape from the clutches of the sadist. She ran away, leaving the attacker with nothing. Then the crazed Wilson jumped back into the stolen Hellcat and fled. An ambulance took Melissa, bruised, with abrasions and a split lip, away. The shocked girl could only think about living until her son's 15th birthday, which she hadn't even managed to congratulate him on yet. Fleeing pursuit, Wilson arrived at his acquaintance businessman Josh's place. He rushed to him in the office in despair, begging for money for a ticket out of town. Puzzled, Josh refused him. Then the crazed Wade blurted out, "You don't understand, Josh, I killed people yesterday." Stunned, the owner called the police, while Wilson hid somewhere in the backyard. Sometime later, Wade broke into the house of a couple who had just left town. Finding himself safe, he called his biological father Stephen and again began begging for help. This time, he told his father everything without concealment: how he strangled the sleeping Christine, calling her a bitch, how he picked up Diana, strangled her right behind the wheel, and then ran her over to make her into a cutlet. And he recounted all this with notes of delight and bravado in his voice, as if he was proud of his atrocities. Stephen was shocked by these horrific revelations. At first, he wanted to protect his son from punishment, but eventually realized that Wade was no longer the child he loved. The murderer had already caused harm and was ready to destroy further. So Stephen made a difficult but correct decision to turn Wade in to the police before he could mutilate other lives. With a heavy heart, the father found out where his son was hiding and directed the authorities there under the pretext of calling a taxi. The police caught Wilson by surprise, and after half an hour of persuasion finally took him into custody. On the morning of October 7th, soon after Wade Wilson's attack on Melissa Montanez, Fort Myers police went to the scene of the incident at Mila Spa Salon. There they found the beaten Melissa, who detailed the attack by her ex and indicated that he had fled in a black Nissan Versa. The victim also told about the history of violence and drug addiction of Wade and expressed her fears that if he had managed to drag her into the car, he would have definitely killed her. According to her, he repeatedly threatened to execute her during the attack. Parallel to this, the Cape Coral police received a call about a suspicious death of 35-year-old Christine Melton in her house on Tudor Drive. At the scene, they found the body of the strangled woman in a sheet tied with her own clothes, as well as signs of a struggle and the disappearance of the victim's car. The gruesome discovery prompted the cops to classify the case as a murder. During her testimony, Wade's ex Melissa recalled that in the morning, he called her from a number that belonged to some Christine Melton from Cape Coral. This clue led investigators to suspect a connection between the attack on Melissa and the murder of Christine. While some law enforcement officers searched for traces of Wade Wilson, others set about establishing his identity by questioning acquaintances and relatives. Soon, the biological father of the suspect, Stephen Testaiska, came forward. He reported that he had received several alarming calls from his son, who confessed to killing 2 people and begged for help to escape. At the insistence of the police, Stephen found out Wade's whereabouts and directed a squad there, assuring his son that he had ordered him a taxi. So around 10 p.m., Wilson was caught in a stranger's house, where he had broken in, hiding from the chase. At first, the criminal refused to surrender, but after half an hour of negotiations, he finally opened the door and ended up in handcuffs. The day after the arrest, Melissa Montanez informed investigators that Wade had called her from prison with declarations of love, but at the same time confessed to the murders of Christine Melton and Diana Ruiz. He detailed how he strangled both women with his bare hands because he just felt like it, while high. This moment of enlightenment finally convinced Melissa that Wade was a dangerous monster, skillfully manipulating emotions and pretending to be innocent. Meanwhile, Wade's father Stephen handed over a mobile phone to the police with a recording of all his son's confessions. Forensic analysis found traces of DNA and fingerprints of Wilson on Christine Melton's body. Blood stains and personal items of both Christine and Diana Ruiz were found in the salon of the Nissan Versa. The phone history of both deceased women also indicated calls from Wilson on the day of the murders. The totality of the evidence left no doubt about the detainee's guilt, despite his attempts to deny everything. Investigators diligently gathered testimonies that revealed the full depth of Wilson's moral degradation. His ex-girlfriends told about the abuse and beatings he inflicted with maniacal regularity. Wilson himself arrogantly boasted of his misdeeds and threatened to continue killing if he escaped. The police even prevented another attempt. Wilson's cellmate asked him to organize the murder of the mother of his child to avoid punishment for domestic violence. In letters to journalists from prison, Wilson rambled about a conspiracy against him and people who will not return. To one woman whose home he had once broken into, the criminal even sent threats from behind bars. He shamelessly traded interviews, promising to reveal some secrets, but all his stories turned out to be delusions. Overall, Wilson's behavior testified to deep corruption and self-centeredness. He was not at all concerned about the fate of his victims or close ones, only caring about his own skin. The trial of Wade Wilson lasted intermittently for 5 years. Sessions were postponed due to COVID restrictions, changes in the defendant's lawyers, or even the death of one of them. Wilson continuously received refusals on absurd petitions for bail or dismissal of the case. The audacious murderer even tried to escape from prison through a window with a fellow inmate. During this time, Wilson managed to make numerous tattoos on his face. The defense requested permission to hide these decorations with makeup so as not to shock the jurors, but the client proudly refused to do so. Finally, in June 2024, the selection of jurors began and the hearings commenced. In the dock sat 30-year-old Wade Wilson, not at all resembling the confident macho from the bars. His face was covered with sinister tattoos, his eyes darted around, and his lips twisted in inappropriate smiles. His entire appearance emitted something wild and untamed. Prosecutors convincingly proved Wilson's malicious intent and his guilt in 2 premeditated murders, assault, and car theft. Particularly striking to the jurors were the confessions of the defendant in the strangulation of the sleeping Christine and the bloody descriptions of the execution of Diana. The defense vainly tried to justify Wilson's atrocities with drug intoxication. The evidence was too eloquent. During the hearings, relatives and friends of the murdered women talked about their grief and pain from the loss. Diana's fiancé sobbed, recalling the last message from his beloved about how much she loved him. The son of the victim stuttered and trembled while giving testimony, so traumatized by his mother's death. Christine's friend Stephanie bitterly regretted trusting her friend to a merciless killer. Christine's relatives mourned the incredible girl, who was their support and favorite aunt for the children. Wade's ex-girlfriend Melissa openly called him a serial killer with empty eyes. Prosecutors emphasized that Wilson killed for the sake of killing, savoring the victim's pre-death torments. According to them, the crimes were the pinnacle of cynical disdain for life and a manifestation of deep hatred for women. This was indicated by his boasting of the executions, detailed descriptions of the agony of the strangled, and abuse of the mutilated bodies. The accusers convinced that Wilson would continue to kill if not stopped. In contrast, the defense attorneys argued that the defendant was a mentally ill drug addict, incapable of being responsible for his actions. They requested that Wilson be found guilty of only involuntary manslaughter of the 2nd degree and given a chance for rehabilitation. The defendant himself refused to testify or apologize to the families of the victims. After 10 hours of deliberation, the jury announced, guilty on all counts, including 2 premeditated murders. Cries erupted in the courtroom. Relatives of Christine and Diana embraced, rejoicing in the long-awaited justice. Only Wilson stood impassively, though tears treacherously shimmered in his eyes. He faced the harshest punishment, the death penalty. Indeed, a week after the verdict, the jury gathered to determine the fate of the killer. This time, the session was brief. The majority of jurors agreed that Wade Wilson deserved the highest measure. According to new laws, the decision did not have to be unanimous. 8 out of 12 votes were enough. The judge only had to approve this verdict, and Wilson awaited a lethal injection. The deaths of Christine Melton and Diana Ruiz at the hands of Wade Wilson were a real shock to their relatives and the entire community of Cape Coral. The senseless and brutal death of two bright women, mothers, friends, colleagues, took a piece of soul from everyone who knew and loved them. Flourishing lives were cut short in an instant, leaving behind indescribable pain and emptiness. Stephanie, Christine's best friend, could not forgive herself for bringing a psychopathic killer into their circle. She constantly thought, what if she had acted differently that fateful night? Could she have saved Christine by being more cautious? These pangs of conscience tormented the girl every day, overshadowing the bright memories of their friendship. Christine's relatives' mother, brother, sister did not even have a chance to say goodbye to her until they identified the mutilated body in the morgue. They pleaded with the heavens for a miracle, hoping that some mistake had occurred. But the terrible truth soon confirmed. Christine was no more. She had died a horrific death at the hands of a monster she had imprudently trusted. Their lives were split into before and after, and their hearts were forever filled with sorrow, anger, and emptiness. An even worse fate befell Diana Ruiz's close ones. For 4 days, they did not know whether their beloved mother, daughter, fiancée, sister was alive. They called hospitals, morgues, police stations hundreds of times, hoping for a miracle. But when hope faded, they had to come to terms with the worst. Diana had died a martyr's death at the hands of a fiend. Diana's fiancé nearly went mad with grief. He blamed himself for not driving his beloved to work that tragic morning. Now the man could only visit her grave daily and weep bitterly, remembering their happy moments. Diana's son could hardly speak about his mother. Every word was an incredible effort. Each memory reopened the wound in his heart. The only consolation for the grieving families was that the murderer of their loved ones would suffer the severest punishment. It would not bring back the deceased, but at least it would quench the thirst for justice and protect others from the fate of Wilson's victims. The court's verdict, life imprisonment or execution, was some satisfaction for their suffering. For Melissa Montanez, the end of their story was also bittersweet. She barely escaped becoming the third victim of her insane ex-lover, and still could not comprehend how he so masterfully pretended to be an innocent lamb. The girl shuddered at the thought of what would have happened if she had believed his sweet promises and given him another chance. Would she have ended up in a suitcase with her throat slit? Only now did Melissa realize what a predator she had been involved with, and she was glad that she finally escaped his clutches, although the emotional scars would remind her of this painful experience for a long time. Inventive father Wade Stephen also received his share of moral torment. Despite all his love for his son, he realized that he had done the right thing by turning him into the police. Otherwise, Wilson Jr. would have continued killing innocents until a bullet stopped him. Yet, despite the pangs of conscience, Stephen blamed himself for not being able to raise Wade as a decent person. Although perhaps such monsters are born with a black soul, and no efforts can cleanse it. At least while justice caught up with Wilson as he deserved. When the jury delivered the verdict about the death penalty, the courtroom erupted in loud applause. Even the judge barely restrained a smile while reading the verdict, and only the murderer himself remained unmoved, as if he still did not feel guilty for his bloody deeds. However, some believed that life imprisonment among criminals would have been an even worse punishment for him than a quick death from an injection. The terrible story of Wade Wilson, Christine Melton, and Diana Ruiz is a warning to all of us. A warning that evil can hide behind an attractive mask, pretend to be a friend and lover. That impulse control and toxic masculinity combined with drugs are a ticking time bomb. That indifference to violence and the objectification of women can lead to a bloody tragedy. Perhaps if someone had stopped Wade during his first attacks on girlfriends, Diana and Christine would be alive. If law enforcement had responded more harshly to his beatings of exes, the next victims would not have joined the list. If we all were more attentive to signs of hidden aggression in the behavior of loved ones, we would more often prevent misfortune. Of course, some will say that maniacs like Wilson are simply incurably sick and dangerous, that no psychotherapy, medications, or upbringing will curb their thirst for blood. But isn't it worth at least trying to tame the demons inside a person with therapy and compassion before handing her over to the executioner? After all, every criminal is someone's child, and someone will cry for them just as the families of Christine and Diana. This, of course, does not absolve Wilson of guilt and does not make him a victim of circumstances. He was fully aware of his actions and boasted of them, considering himself above morality. Such inhumans indeed do not deserve to live in a society they despise. But shouldn't more effort be made to stop them before they become monsters? Perhaps then Christine, Diana, and hundreds of other victims would have lived to see grey hair in the family circle. This tragedy cannot be undone, but it must teach us something. Be more cautious when meeting strangers. Pay attention to alarming changes in the behavior of loved ones. Respond to the first signs of violence and toxicity in relationships. Support each other and together stand against evil. Only then will the murders of Christine and Diana not be in vain, and the memory of them will inspire us to make our world safer and better for everyone.